It all starts by showing that nowadays, the trend is to go live and record everything all the time. Because of this, it doesn't matter where you are, because there will always be someone filming themselves. But the problem is, this whole video routine ended up getting really boring and repetitive. So, the internet got flooded with content that always seems to be the same old thing. With that, people just got tired of seeing the same faces doing the same things over and over. At this moment, we see a guy on the subway who just can't stand this monotony anymore. He watches a regular guy on the screen and realizes the world has become a total bore. However, something bizarre happened to planet Earth about 3 years ago. Out of nowhere, a rabbit from space appeared, asking if his broadcast was coming through okay. But the creature didn't come alone and brought several species from other worlds with him. Back then, people were scared, but these visitors weren't looking for a fight. In fact, they are part of very peaceful civilizations filled with magic, with incredible worlds where there are even giant dragons and powerful knights. Because of this, these broadcasts from another planet became everyone's favorite pastime. The protagonist finds all of this very funny as he watches on his monitor. He used to work in this kind of business but quit everything after a bad day. Now, the young man lives locked in his room, just watching life pass by aimlessly. Without a job or dreams, the guy feels lost in this crazy new reality. But he knows he can't keep going like this forever. Suddenly, a strange light starts glowing on the wall, startling the boy. The guy gets up scared, thinking he made too much noise, so he decides to lower the volume. However, the light only gets brighter, and the young man has no idea what's going on. At that moment, his bedroom wall simply explodes, leaving him frozen in shock. With his face covered in dust, the protagonist is speechless after what just happened. He then looks at the floor and sees a girl lying there, along with a mission complete message. The stream's chat explodes with messages while the girl greets him a bit awkwardly. The girl on the floor starts apologizing desperately for what happened. The guy ignores her apology and says he's going to call the police because of the hole in his wall. But the young woman quickly gets up and grabs his arm, begging not to be reported. She explains that if she's reported, she'll be deported, as aliens can't commit crimes. With a panicked look on her face, the girl pleads with him to have a little mercy. Seeing the girl's desperation, the guy finally asks her to calm down a bit. After they calm down, he asks if she was in a broadcast, and the young woman confirms it. He then asks how much money she received to have a reaction that destroyed a wall. The girl gets embarrassed and tries to remember the exact amount she received for the donation. The protagonist guesses a value of 5 million won, and she seems happy with the idea. But she corrects him, saying it was only 50,000, and he can't believe the amount. The guy thinks the price is way too low, but the girl says it's a professional thing. So he decides the best thing to do is call the landlord, but the girl looks worried. She confesses that her rent is also late, and if they find out, she'll be evicted. The girl says she has nowhere to go and begs for a little time to fix the damage. She kneels and promises she'll work hard to get the necessary money. The guy agrees to give her a chance but says she only has 1 week. The young woman cries with happiness and thanks him so much for the opportunity he gave her. With that, he thinks that since she's a streamer, the wall repair will be paid for soon. He then decides that if she doesn't pay, he'll tell the building owner everything and tries to forget about it. However, curiosity gets the better of him, and he can't get it out of his head. The guy gets curious about the neighbor's stream that managed to break his wall. After watching her stream for a week, he finally understands the situation. The girl is super shy during the stream and can barely speak up to thank people for donations. She also doesn't know how to react and says she can't do a handstand against the wall anymore. At this, the protagonist realizes she's a lost cause and has no talent for this. He thinks her stream is the worst he's seen in years and decides to go talk to her. So the young man goes to the hole in the wall to get his neighbor's attention. Startled, the girl takes off her headphones to see who's talking to her. She's surprised by the visit, while her chat goes wild with the new content. The week they agreed on has passed, and the girl begs for more time, but he refuses. He says it's easier to talk to the landlord since the promised time is up. The girl grabs his clothes, asking him to wait, but he says her stream is a failure. She defends herself, saying she just started and with a little more time, everything will work out. He says more time won't solve the problem, and she gets irritated, not understanding why. The young woman defends herself, saying she's pretty and has a good voice, while the chat compliments her appearance. She then wonders why she doesn't get more viewers if she plays games that are considered fun, but he retorts that her stories are not funny, and that's why she's not successful. The girl insists her stream is fun, but the guy knows that's not really the case. With that, she comes to the conclusion that her viewers are the strange ones for not seeing her talent. The protagonist loses his patience and yells that she's terrible at streaming and is doing everything wrong. He then points out that her voice is too quiet and there's no interaction with the audience. The guy continues his scolding, asking how she expects to succeed if she can't even read the chat properly. Then he starts giving her orders to fix her posture and tie up her hair to look better. Next, he tells the young woman to sit down, and she obeys, completely scared by the lecture. The boy continues the training, telling her to check the chat and change the subject if the reaction is bad. He explains that just opening your mouth doesn't make a broadcast, and that she needs to study other streams. The guy asks if she understood, and the girl replies yes with her eyes full of tears. After a while, the stream finally ends, and the girl is completely exhausted. She thought she was going to go crazy with so much pressure, but the result was surprising. The audience's reaction was explosive, and the girl excitedly thanks someone for a donation she received. With that, the donations didn't stop, and one user even asked to be yelled at by the streamer. For the first time in her life, her broadcast became one of the trending topics of the moment. The protagonist then says he's leaving and asks her to fix the wall soon. The girl realizes that with his help, she can become a great streamer. At this, she says that with the guy's support, she might be able to achieve a huge goal. She excitedly introduces herself as Yahello, the demon queen. The protagonist stands there looking at her, not understanding a thing. Then the girl asks with all her sincerity for him to become her manager. The guy remains confused and wonders about what she said about being a demon queen. The story goes back 3 years to when the other races arrived on Earth. At that time, most of the space visitors were very friendly with humans. However, the demon people from the demon star were not friendly at all. Because of that, sending the demon queen back to her world was not easy. Back in the present, the guy wonders if that girl is really the so-called queen. He stares at the young woman suspiciously, and she asks him why he's looking at her like that. The protagonist then tells the girl to stop lying, and she is shocked by the accusation. He doubts her, saying it would be impossible for a demon queen to be there. With that, the guy calls her a self-proclaimed demon queen and tells her to find another manager. Yahello gets annoyed and asks how many times she has to repeat that she is the demon queen. He replies that no one would take the job with her saying such weird things. But the guy makes a deal and says he'll be her manager if she really is the queen. The girl asks if he's serious and warns him that he can't go back on his word. He was about to confirm, but something strange happens and leaves him confused. Suddenly, yellow lightning starts falling from the sky, illuminating the whole neighborhood. A purple aura surrounds the girl, who starts floating in the air, frightening the guy. Completely shocked by the scene, the protagonist can barely believe what he's seeing. Then Yahello shows a ball of light in her hand, proving that she really is the demon queen. With tears in his eyes, the young man admits he was wrong and asks her to stop. At this, he realizes something important as he stares at the floating girl. It looks like the young woman isn't going to stop, and a bright light takes over everything again. The protagonist cowers in the corner asking for help, but she says everything is fine. Yahello then asks with a serious look if he now believes that she is the queen. The guy remains silent, processing all the craziness he just witnessed. Sitting on the bed, he asks to be spared and asks how she's here. The young woman explains that the queen from 3 years ago is someone else, and there are 4 in total. He asks if she's going to attack humans, and the girl says no, leaving the guy relieved. With that, the girl reveals that she actually really likes living on Earth. She finds the planet more fun than the demon realm and enjoys streaming. So Yahello begs him one more time to be her manager and help the channel. The protagonist becomes thoughtful, as being someone's manager is a huge responsibility. But the girl makes a pleading face, and he starts to waver. He thinks her personality could be a charm, and being a queen is good marketing. Even though he'd sworn off streaming, he looks at the broken wall and takes the job. Yahello gets super excited, but the guy says there's a condition for the agreement. He explains that the contract will be on his terms, and she's curious about the other part. The young man then says she needs to fix the wall first to seal the deal. The girl agrees right away without a second thought. With that, she accepts all the terms and the management period without complaining. The girl says she'll want to continue even after the repair and calls him her manager. A little embarrassed by the young woman's excitement, he just goes along with the situation. Then the guy hands her the contract to read and sign the document. Yahello asks where to sign, and he points to the spot, telling her to read the back too. But the girl ignores the warning, and he insists that she read the contract first. Even so, the young woman signs the paper, leaving the protagonist with a worried look. She then proudly shows her signature and asks what he thought of her drawing. The guy asks if she read everything before signing, and Yahello says no. The girl says she trusts him to take care of everything, and the young man gives a mischievous smile. At this, he angrily pinches her cheeks, and the girl says she wouldn't have understood anything anyway. The new manager says she should have asked for an explanation before signing. He realizes the girl only has the name of a demon queen but is actually very naive. The girl explains she just wanted to secure the deal, and he doesn't know what to do. Because of this, the guy decides to rewrite the contract and explain everything calmly. The young woman gets super excited and rushes to his side while the guy tells her to calm down. The boy starts to explain all the terms of the new contract, and the neighbor just nods her head. He says the agreement is temporary, and that he will handle all the planning and filming. With that, she must participate in all the content created without complaining about a thing. The guy warns that the deal is valid until the wall is fixed, and then they'll decide the future. At that moment, the girl hands over the paper, and the protagonist realizes the real signatures are missing. So he asks the young woman to hold out her hand for a moment, and she doesn't understand why. Ale looks at him a bit suspiciously, and the guy carefully takes her finger, but the girl gets scared and asks why he needs her hand to close the deal. The young man explains that a drawn signature won't work, and it's better to use a thumbprint. The girl's eyes go wide, and she asks if this is some kind of blood oath between them. At this, the protagonist realizes that's what they call contracts in the demon world. With everything ready, he tells her not to be nervous, as it's just a simple procedure. Then the two of them put their thumbs on the document to finally seal their work partnership. The girl is relieved to have completed the blood pact, and the guy finds the term amusing. He suggests she use those dramatic words on her stream, because the audience will find it fun. Next, the manager hands over a copy of the paper so they can each keep their part. The young woman holds the document fondly, saying that it's proof of their commitment. The guy finally introduces himself as Kang Daeyeon and says he expects great results from the partnership. Suddenly, the scene changes to a frozen mountain where poor Al is almost freezing. At this, the boy appears all bundled up and says this is all just to generate new content. The girl is shivering from the cold and complains that she can't take this situation anymore. The young woman screams in desperation, asking what kind of stream they plan to do there. Without a response, she turns and shouts the manager's name, demanding an explanation. Suddenly, the girl stops screaming and is in shock at a completely unexpected scene. It seems the guy had some bad luck and is now frozen, asking for help to get out. With her power, the young woman melts the ice and Daeyeon confesses he almost met his end for real. Then the streamer gets angry and asks why they came to a place like this. The girl yells that the place is completely frozen and very dangerous. She says no one streams there anymore, but the young man says that's exactly why they're there. Daeyeon then replies that the plan they have is actually the girl herself. Not understanding at all, the girl gets mad and asks what the heck he means by that. He then says there's no other way, and to make real money, they need to reach the top 100. In other words, the goal is to become a famous streamer like the ones at the top of the rankings. At this, he shows that the young woman's channel doesn't even appear in the overall streamer rankings. Even when they promote the channel, people's reactions are always the worst possible. The only way to increase traffic would be through YouTube, but they don't have money for that. In the end, the only option left for them are the famous fan-made clips. The young man says with determination that they will climb the place and create moments for the clips. The girl then asks if struggling through a climb is really something fun. He assures her that it is and that she'll see when they get there, because it's not a normal climb. Suddenly, the girl starts to cry and screams the manager's name desperately. Out of nowhere, giant rocks start falling from the sky, and the young woman runs away scared. Meanwhile, the guy films everything and tells her not to worry because he's recording. Then he starts giving orders and yells for the girl to dodge to the right. Ale dodges at the last second, and the giant rock almost hits her squarely. Next, he tells the young woman to jump really high, and she manages to dodge again. Daeyeon says the pattern is always the same, and the girl wonders how he knows that. He replies that he obviously researched everything about the place before they came. The guy explains that he studied every detail of that frozen planet, especially the main part called the Snowfield of Laments. With that, he warns that the next trap will be the same, and she gets confused. The young man ignores the question and suggests they keep walking, which irritates the girl. He then tells her to think of it as just a fun walk, but she disagrees. In reality, they are on a frozen planet that no one has ever managed to explore. The reason so many streamers give up on streaming there is shown next. One of them is the extreme cold that almost froze the girl's manager. And there are also the unpredictable dangers of the snowfield, which are quite perilous. It seems that on this planet, the main content is precisely this snowfield. Daeyeon starts yelling several commands, and the young woman asks what that is. Dodging everything, she asks if by any chance she's controlling a game character. He then yells that the next trap is on the ground, and the girl looks down. From the ground, huge ice spikes emerge, trapping her in place in an instant. The guy says with a smile that for a demon queen, this should be pretty easy. But the young woman ends up trapped and asks for help while the chat reacts excitedly to the scene. Daeyeon realizes it wasn't so easy after all and runs to help while the chat goes crazy. He asks if she's okay, and the girl says yes, but her clothes got stuck in the ice. The guy is relieved that she's the demon queen, and Ale thanks him for his help. He tries to pull her backpack, but something seems wrong, and the young woman gets very confused. The manager comments to the girl that she's heavier than he imagined. With her face red with embarrassment, the young woman immediately denies his accusation. She then yells that it's because of her wet clothes, and the guy apologizes. The girl understands that the plan is to get through the disasters to get good clips. He confirms and says the views will explode if they pull it off. With that, the girl gets excited and yells for them to go, while the guy is surprised. She then says the top isn't far, but he warns that there's a serious problem. The next disaster starts to approach, and the young woman asks what they should do now. To the girl's surprise, the manager replies that he doesn't know what to do either. He then explains that this is as far as people have managed to get before failing. The guy reinforces that this is a planet completely unexplored by all streamers. Doyan says he's counting on her, and the young woman asks if he realizes what he's asking. He pushes the girl forward, saying she's the demon queen and needs to handle it. A giant avalanche comes down the mountain, leaving them both in a total panic. Covered in snow, the manager says the disaster seems weak and she can use her powers. The girl explains that her power isn't infinite and she gets tired if she uses her ability too much. She then reveals that what she did before was just a quick demonstration to impress him. With a smile, the young woman assures him she'll take care of everything, and he doesn't need to worry. The guy smirks and says he'll trust her to handle the complicated situation. At this, an avalanche starts to come down, and Diane gets scared, but she tells him to stay calm. The girl uses her power and stops the avalanche in its tracks with a purple barrier. With her eyes glowing, she yells at him, asking why he's not filming this moment. He replies that he's filming everything, and the stream's chat goes wild over the scene. So the two decide they will try to reach the top of the mountain no matter what. The scene changes to a luxurious house where someone says the video upload is complete. This person saw the duo's clips and wonders if they really went to that place. The woman is Yahello, a clipper with 12 million subscribers, and she thinks they're crazy. Her phone rings, and the girl complains that it's another weirdo calling her again. She answers, and the person on the other end asks if she doesn't know why they're calling. The person says their contract is to post by this month and tells her to watch the video. The voice says the duo looks like they're going to make it to the top of the mountain of laments. The woman watches the scene on her phone, and is shocked by what she's seeing. The woman on the phone says that's Kang Dian, and he hasn't changed at all. The person asks if she knows him, and the girl replies yes, but she doesn't care much. The voice on the phone says that if they reach the top, all the attention will be stolen. The woman on the other end of the line just agrees with the possibility and seems thoughtful. Meanwhile, several other streamers complain that streams have been a bit slow lately. They know that if something new and interesting suddenly appears on the scene, the competition will get much fiercer, and they might even lose ground. At this, the four most famous streamers of the moment seem very worried about the news. Because of this, one of them asks what the name of the channel making all this noise is. The scene then returns to the frozen mountain where the duo has finally reached the top. The scene changes to another streamer who just made coffee and is feeling lazy about work. She wonders where she left off and remembers she finished editing a video 2 days ago. So the girl decides it's better to start working a little and sits in front of the computer. But the girl is in shock at a piece of news she just saw on her laptop screen. The news says that the snow mountain has finally been fully explored. Next, a stage-cleared message appears for the duo at the top of the mountain. A yellow portal appears in front of them, and the girl can't believe they made it. With a red face, the young woman calls the guy and asks if he has anything to say. She then says with a smile that she managed to get through all that thanks to his help. The manager looks at her and asks if she remembers how they got there. The girl replies yes, a bit awkwardly, while the manager stares at her with a very serious look. At that moment, she apologizes and confesses that her memory just ran out at that exact point. With that, the young streamer loses her strength and starts to fall backward, leaving the guy desperate. So he runs as fast as he can, shouting his neighbor's name to try and catch the girl. The guy approaches worried and realizes she used too much mana to stop that avalanche. Ao looks very pale and exhausted while the young man tries to understand what suddenly happened to her. At this, the boy tries to wake up the little demon, but she remains unconscious and unresponsive. The girl whispers that she has no strength left, and the chat comments that she ran out of magic energy. So the manager turns around and offers his back for her to climb on and get out of that frozen place. He warns that they have no choice, and tells the young woman to get on quickly as they're almost at their goal. With a blushing face, the girl asks if he would have left her behind if she hadn't shown up there. The guy retorts, asking what she's talking about as he carries the streamer, who holds the camera excitedly. He says he warned her there was no other way, but the duo finally manages to cross back through the portal. The young woman then brags, saying they only managed to complete the challenge because of her great talent. But the manager ignores the comment and tells her to look at what's happening on the phone screen. The girl stares at the device intently as her eyes sparkle with curiosity at what she's seeing. Suddenly, several donations of 50,000 won appear on the screen, and the chat is surprised by so much money. Ale realizes the amount is so high that there will be a lot of money left over even after fixing the wall. Doyeon calmly explains that the repair costs are not as high as she imagined. The young woman then makes a shy face and says she used a lot of authority, so now she needs a recharge. Curious, the girl asks what this recharge would be like, and the guy gets a bit awkward with the situation. At that moment, he starts to break out in a cold sweat, and the mood between them gets a little strange. Then the girl gets even closer, and the manager seems very tense with her question. With that, the scene changes to a common building in the city, and we see the day breaking calmly. Soon, the streamer's eyes sparkle intensely, and she seems to have found something wonderful. On the table, we see an absurd amount of sweets and pastries that leave the little demon fascinated. She starts eating everything very quickly and states that now she finally feels like she can live again. Watching the scene, the young man questions if eating so many sweets is really her way of recharging. Ale then explains that sugar serves as fuel for her brain and smiles at the guy. Even though he finds that weird, he agrees, and the neighbor says her people work that way. While enjoying a pastry, the boy comments that he hopes the number of subscribers has gone up a bit. But upon looking at his phone screen, the protagonist freezes, and his eyes nearly pop out of his head. In that instant, he lets out a scream of shock, leaving the poor girl completely confused. Scared, the streamer starts to cry and asks if she did something wrong during the recording. He replies that nothing makes sense because even after completing the stage, the result was too absurd. Then the guy shows the device to the girl and points to the numbers that won't stop climbing. The graph shows that her channel jumped to 10,000 followers in a record amount of time for a stream. With that, he reveals that their goal was only 3,000, and that number is simply huge. Excited, the neighbor grabs his shirt, and Doyeon says it's rare for views to turn into subscribers. But the girl points to the phone and yells for him to look at something very important on the app. At this, the young woman shows that a famous clipper posted their video and gets very excited about the news. Then the guy watches the content go viral and understands the real reason for so many new followers on the channel. At this moment, the manager decides they need to create a YouTube channel immediately to grow. A bit confused, the streamer asks what he means by creating something new at such a busy time. He reinforces the idea of creating the channel on the video platform and stares at his neighbor firmly. Sadly, the girl remembers they gave up on that before because they didn't have money to pay a good editor. With that, the boy states that the time to act is now, but the young woman questions him about the donation money. Sheepishly, the guy confesses that he spent the entire amount they received on sweets for the demon's recharge. Realizing the financial blunder, the protagonist puts his hand on his head, trying to find a viable solution. Thoughtfully, he wonders if there's any way to solve this huge problem without spending what they don't have. At this, a plan starts to form in the manager's mind as he stares into space with great seriousness. Observing her partner's silence, the girl doesn't understand anything and just waits for his response. Suddenly, the young man gives a somewhat wicked smile and says he just remembered a very useful person. Meanwhile, the redhead Sook sighs deeply, thinking about an old friend who disappeared a long time ago. Annoyed, the girl calls the said friend an unbelievable idiot while continuing to eat her meal peacefully. She remembers this guy disappeared off the map for a while, but now he seems to be everywhere. At this, the young woman sees the post about the first conquest on the mountain and realizes he's back to streaming. Suddenly, her phone starts buzzing with a message from the guy himself, asking how she's doing. Shocked by the unexpected contact, the girl screams in surprise and can hardly believe what she's seeing on the screen. Then she apologizes to her followers and says she'll have to postpone the advice session today. On the computer screen, we see the end of a call where the guy promises to call back soon. But the redhead on the other end of the line seems very angry and calls her old colleague an idiot for disappearing. With a very serious look, she walks towards the meeting place to confront the boy. At this moment, the scene changes to a modern and luxurious building where the meeting will finally happen. Then the guy asks if she really called him to that place just to talk about this boring subject. At this, the red-haired girl's face turns red with so much anger she's feeling towards him right now. She grips the cup of iced coffee tightly as she says the protagonist's name in a warning tone. Suddenly, the liquid flies everywhere and hits the young manager right in the face. With his face all soaked, the poor young man puts his hand over his eyes, not believing what just happened. But the girl doesn't stop there and tells him to get out of her sight as she finishes, throwing the rest of the drink. At this moment, the guy tries to clean up the mess, completely frustrated with his friend's violent reception. He then hands her the contract papers, but she says he has a lot of nerve to ask for something like this now. The editor questions if he really wants her to go back to working on his videos after 3 years. With a dark look, The girl wonders if she's lost her mind for even listening to that crazy proposal. The protagonist tries to explain that it's all just a big misunderstanding, but the young woman doesn't believe a word. With that, the redhead complains that the guy simply disappeared off the map without telling anyone on the team. She approaches him and asks what part of the story the boy is going to try to invent to justify everything. Annoyed, the girl yells, asking if he was in an accident or if he has a better excuse for ghosting them. The guy offers a sincere apology and explains that things got really crazy in his life back then. At that moment, he adjusts his glasses and reveals that he also had to complete his military service time. The redhead yells that this is just another lame excuse, and she doesn't believe anything he's saying. Suddenly, the girl stops yelling and is in shock, processing the new information she received from the guy. He then repeats that he went to military service, and that he was ashamed to tell everyone after it was over. The young man apologizes for not calling, but she says that doesn't change the fact that he vanished off the map. With that, the manager tries to apologize once more, but the Edda yells at him to stop talking now. With her face all red, the redhead complains that he should have told her the whole truth from the beginning. Then the girl says she understands the reason and asks if he wants help editing the videos for his channel. But the guy denies it right away, and the editor is left wondering what the heck he means by that. He says the person should arrive soon, and that his friend has probably seen her somewhere on the internet. At that moment, Isle finally arrives, and the boy says she took a little while to show up. He then asks the editor to take care of Demon Queen Isle's channel, and the young woman greets her shyly. The streamer introduces herself to the girl and says she's heard a lot of good things about her and her work as an editor. The redhead replies a bit awkwardly that it's a pleasure to meet her and is very confused by the whole situation. With a furious face, the editor asks if the protagonist is really serious about that request. She then gets up, completely annoyed, and says she won't take the job under any circumstances. The young woman glares at him angrily and asks if he doesn't know that demons are forbidden from entering Earth. With her arms crossed, she points to the girl and says she doesn't know how he got himself into such a mess. The editor tells the girl to turn herself in, but the young woman says she is the South Demon Queen and therefore has permission. Doyen confirms that Isle entered the planet legally and asks if the girl will take the job now. The redhead thinks for a moment and says she finally understands what's going on between them. The redhead explains that she already has a channel to manage and can't just take on another one like this. With that, she questions why she should take care of Isle's channel if it doesn't even belong to her friend. The streamer excitedly replies that she feels like they're doing everything together, but the editor cuts her off. The mood gets tense, and the two start arguing with the redhead, who seems about to explode with anger. To try to calm the situation, the white-haired young woman decides to explain the whole story calmly. She reveals that the Demon King who attacked her 3 years ago was named Whis. At this, the girl explains that there are actually 4 Demon Kings, and she is one of them. The demon realm is divided into 4 parts, and that Whis was the queen of the northern region. As the other kings wanted peace, only the demons from the north were forbidden from entering Earth. The manager realizes that if they keep talking, the redhead will never accept the proposal. So he says he takes care of everything, and with her skill, it would be easy to manage 2 channels. The editor agrees with the compliment but still seems a bit unsure about the idea of the new job. The guy holds his cup and prepares to deliver the final blow in the conversation. He says she's the only one he trusts because they've worked together before. With that, the young man pleads with her to accept just this once because he feels comfortable with her. Seeing that his friend is wavering, he asks Isle to help convince her with a quick compliment. The streamer nervously says she thinks the girl is amazing and that she's watched all the videos she edited. She continues, saying she didn't find any boring parts and the effects were perfect. The young demon asks the redhead to be her editor, and the guy asks her to join the project. With that, the streamer begs, calling the editor supreme, and the redhead looks like she's about to agree. With that, the red-haired girl grumbles, saying she can't take all this pressure anymore. With no more strength to argue, the editor finally yells that she accepts the job just to get rid of them. The guy and the young demon celebrate their victory with a fist bump, and the redhead admits defeat. But she recovers from the drama and asks what her salary will be for the service. The girl then warns that the price for editing nowadays is much higher than when they used to work together. The editor notices the stalling and asks what's really going on with their money. At that moment, the white-haired streamer tries to start explaining the situation, but is very nervous. Suddenly, the little demon's phone rings, and she apologizes, saying she needs to take the call. The protagonist wonders who would call the young woman at that exact moment of their negotiation. Then he grabs the device and is very surprised by the name that appears on the girl's phone screen. The young man steps out to answer, and Isle apologizes, saying he was going to explain everything to the editor. The little demon tries to explain how the story came about to the Supreme Sook, but doesn't know what to say. With that, the editor says she already knows the plan and that the proposal is to work now and get paid later. But the young woman says her friend got it right and that they still have a little money left from the donations. The red-haired girl says she understands the situation for now and that she'll think about it more. She then warns that all the contract details need to be discussed with the young woman's manager. The editor thinks that her old friend hasn't changed at all and that this Isle girl is very strange. Meanwhile, the little demon eats a small cake and asks if her new coworker wants a piece. The redhead stares at the streamer with great curiosity and says she has a very important question to ask. Then she asks what the young woman's relationship is with Diane, and the girl doesn't understand why. The redhead then asks if they are dating, and the young woman freaks out, denying it instantly. She explains that they are just neighbors and that she invited him to the job. The editor gives a slightly suspicious smile as she analyzes the whole situation. With that, the girl crosses her fingers and says she finally understands what's going on there. Suddenly, the manager comes running back, yelling the young woman's name, startling the editor. The editor says they have a big problem, and the streamer asks what happened. The guy then reveals with a serious look that the whole problem is because of the wall. The two girls are confused and wonder what the wall has to do with it. With a panicked face, the young man yells that the wall of their house simply collapsed. The redhead questions the coincidence of the broken wall, and they don't know what to do. He explains that because of it, he can't get the security deposit back, and the young woman can't be deported. The guy laments that now they have nowhere to live. Completely frustrated with the situation, the young man takes off his glasses to think better. With that, he apologizes to his friend and says he needs some time to think. But the editor says there's no point in thinking, because he himself said he has nowhere to live. The redhead then says they have no choice and gives a very mischievous smile to the duo. With a provocative look, the young woman asks if they want to live together in her house. The duo is paralyzed by the offer and stares at the editor, not knowing what to say. At that moment, the little demon lets out a scream of shock at the unexpected proposal. Then the scene changes to a huge, luxurious house that seems to belong to the editor herself. The manager says his friend scared him with the invitation, but she sees no reason for such a fuss. The young demon agrees and says they'll only stay there until the house repairs are done. The white-haired streamer complains about the way the redhead spoke, making her embarrassed. With a red face, the young demon says the invitation was very shameless. But the editor replies that the girl is the one being shameless, leaving her confused. Then the redhead asks if the guy got excited about the invitation, and he gets embarrassed. The young man replies that he would be more excited if she helped with the move, but she refuses. The girl asks why he said that, and the guy replies it was just for fun. At this, the editor says it must have been hard to climb the stairs and that the room has a very bad layout. With that, she warns that he and the girl will have to use the same floor because she can't use it with them. After carrying all the boxes, the new house is almost all set up. Then they organize the clothes and put everything in its place to finish the move. The protagonist thanks her for the help and says they have now solved their housing problem. The little demon cries with happiness and thanks the editor so much for the opportunity she gave them. Meanwhile, the manager observes the scene and tries to understand how everything got to this point. He comments that he didn't expect the wall to completely collapse during the repair. The editor says the landlords will take them back and won't report the case. At this, she opens the fridge and sees that everything worked out in the end for all of them. With that, the redhead grabs a can of beer and invites the two for a welcome party. Then the young woman winks at the guy and asks if he's up for the celebration. The duo is surprised by the question, but can't hide their interest in their friend's proposal. The white-haired streamer says she would love to join, and the guy agrees with the idea. At this, night falls, and the three of them sit together to enjoy the small celebration. After a few drinks, the table is full of empty cans, and the party continues to be lively. The editor calls her friend a punk, and he doesn't understand the reason for the sudden insult. With that, the redhead starts complaining again about him disappearing for 3 long years. But she changes the subject and starts pinching the young woman's cheeks, saying she's cute. The protagonist eats a chip and says that technically, she's a demon queen. With a blushing face, the girl says it's getting late and she needs to go to her room. Then she gets up and says that if they're going to stay longer, they should call her for the cleanup. But the editor tells the young demon not to worry and that her friend will clean everything up. The white-haired streamer agrees and goes to her room while the two continue drinking. With the table full of food and drinks, the duo starts talking about the past. The guy calls the editor by her name, and she gets embarrassed about what he's going to say. He then thanks her for everything she's done for them since they arrived at her house. But the redhead says he's saying cheesy things and that she even got goosebumps from the scene. The young man insists he's being sincere and that it's a bit awkward, but he likes the idea. The red-haired girl says it's better to keep him close so he doesn't disappear again. He apologizes once more for disappearing, but the redhead ignores him and asks another question. With a serious look, she asks if he still remembers when they were young. Of course, he remembers those school days when they were just kids. He recalls that her nickname was Water Purifier, because she cried so much. At this, the young man was the first to talk to the girl who had no friends. So they would spend the whole day playing video games in his living room. With that, the redhead had a lot of fun spending her free time with her classmate, but the years passed, and now the two have grown up and changed a lot. Back in the present, the guy gets all embarrassed about the old topic. At that moment, the two end up getting very close to each other at the table. With a blushing face, the boy says she's too close to him now. He asks if the girl is dizzy and suggests she go rest soon. At this, the editor touches his hand and says she's not drunk at all. Then the young woman asks him to wait a bit as she stares at him intently. With their faces almost touching, the tension between the two becomes very intense. Suddenly, the little demon interrupts, asking where the bathroom is. Startled, they pull apart, and the redhead points the way, yelling nervously. With the young woman's departure, a very strange silence takes over the whole place. So the protagonist decides to step out for a moment to get some fresh air. The guy leaves, and the editor just nods, trying to hide her expression. At this, the girl freaks out and grabs her hair, not believing her crazy actions. She hides in her arms, dying of embarrassment over what almost happened there. In the past, kids would stick notes on the redhead's back to make fun of her appearance. So little Sook would be isolated in the classroom while the others laughed at her sadness. But at that moment, someone approached to talk to the lonely girl for the first time. Young Diane was the only one who showed concern for her on that difficult day. With that, he became her great protector and changed the girl's destiny at school. At this moment, the girl stares into space, remembering every important detail from that time in her childhood. Then, alone at the table, she reflects on how things have changed so much between them. At this, the editor opens another can of her drink to try to forget the tense mood. She takes a long sip as she tries to process everything she felt today in the apartment. But the redhead wonders if she acted so boldly just because of the alcohol. Suddenly, the little demon appears, asking if her new friend is really okay. With that, she wants to know where the guy went because she needs to tell him something very serious. So the girl points to the balcony and says he went out for some fresh air. At that moment, the editor tells the girl to go get the manager outside immediately. With that, the neighbor runs to the garden, calling for her work partner in an urgent tone. But she is in total shock when she witnesses a bizarre scene happening in the dark. Then the young woman runs back, screaming desperately for the homeowner's name. Scared, the redhead asks if the guy suddenly decided to cancel the work contract, but the little demon yells that a huge disaster has happened to her old friend. At this, the editor freezes in fear, imagining that something terrible has happened to him.